Hello and welcome to this session today. It's going to be run by Pro Bono OR with the support of the Charities Aid Foundation. If you don't know who we are, then we'll explain shortly. Just some quick housekeeping. You'll notice there is a poll question set up. Please don't fill that out until you're prompted to. You can only select one answer, so please select the most appropriate or challenging. You'll understand more when we get to it. We also want you to ask all the questions that you want to in this session, so please write any questions in the chat function. And Ashley, who's with us, will be collating all of those to be answered at the end of the session. So I'm going to pass over now to my colleague Jane, who's going to take us through our agenda for today.
Hello, I'm Jane. We're trying to cover quite a lot this morning. We're going to talk about some research on the impact of COVID-19 on charities. We're going to cover our Pro Bono OR scheme, and we're going to list some case studies that we've done that we hope will show you how we can help you with dealing with your challenges. And lastly, we want to have a few minutes where you've got the opportunity to discuss your challenges. Thanks. Next one, Amy. Yes. So welcome to this session. I'm going to give you a very, very quick run through of what operational research is, in case you haven't heard of it. It's basically using scientific methods, and you've probably come across data analysis and computer modeling, and we use it to improve insight, improve your efficiency and your effectiveness. And it's already used very widely in public and private sectors, though not so much in the third sector at the moment. Thank you. And the sort of things that it can help with, if you're looking at your strategy to see how you need to develop your strategy over the next few years, if you're looking about making decisions, maybe on which of your facilities to do more of, which new things to do. If you're looking at improving your systems, what computer systems, what manual systems you've got, improving, designing the way things work, your processes, all about setting your targets, how you can make your operations work better, and lastly, how you can measure your performance and measure the impact that you're making, which you obviously need to know in order to get funding. Thanks, Amy. Over to Kate Hammond from the Charities Aid Foundation.
Thanks, Jane. Good morning. I'm Kate. I'm the Insight Manager at the Charities Aid Foundation. So I manage a team of data analysts and researchers. And as part of that team, we're sort of collectively producing insight, which is focused on sort of driving internal efficiencies, but also external facing across the sector as well. I wanted to just spend some time this morning sharing some of CAF's research findings into the impact of COVID-19 on charities, and also some sort of research findings around what charities are doing to sort of adapt, thrive, and also sort of survive as we start to emerge from this pandemic. And hopefully that then sort of sets a sort of a landscape and context for how the Pro Bono Operational Research Society scheme can perhaps help with some of these changes. But before I go on and talk about the research, I just mention a few words about CAF as an organisation, as a charity. So CAF, the Charities Aid Foundation, is actually one of Europe's largest foundations and is, in terms of income, the 7th largest charity in the UK. It's perhaps not one that people have widely heard of, and that's possibly because we're not a fundraising charity, but we are a charity that offers predominantly financial services to charities and also to corporate clients that we work quite closely with to help administer their CSR schemes and also facilitate payroll giving. We also work with individual donors who want to give to charities within the UK and overseas, and want to be able to do that in a tax effective way. In terms of the services that we offer to charities, so CAF owns a bank, so we offer a lot of sort of high street banking services to charities, lending, investments, and we also administer grant funding programs as well. So just a bit of introduction about CAF. We do work across 6 continents, so we have offices in countries around the world, and collectively we work with more than sort of 3,400 businesses, 200,000 donors, and 79,000 charities, with a mission to sort of transform people's lives and communities around the world. Next slide, please. So the research itself, so CAF does, we have quite an extensive research program where we do research across all of our audiences, so across charities, corporates, and individuals. And particularly, I think within the UK, we run a monthly tracking survey called UK Giving, where we poll people's sort of attitudes and behaviours towards philanthropy and giving. But the research I wanted to talk about specifically today is some of our pulse polling research that we started at the start of the pandemic. And initially we sent out these polls on a weekly basis, really as a tool to sort of communicate with our charity clients and audiences, and also to really sort of pick up on the feedback that we were getting from charities. So initially we did these weekly, and then we've started then sort of align these pulse polls with government announcements and sort of key changes in that roadmap as we emerge out of lockdown. So as of sort of today, we're about to launch our 20th poll, and as part of that, we've sort of, we've been able to reach out to sort of 7,344 individuals as part of that research. Just in terms of the research, the nature of it was very rapid. It was put together, as quite a rapid sort of tool, which is probably important to sort of bear in mind when we come to look at some of the findings. Next slide, please. So predominantly what we found, what charities were saying was that, income was down, but there was, we're really seeing this sort of increased demand for charity services. So more than half of charities agreed that donations had decreased, and more than 3 in 10 charities saw an increase in that demand. And for most of these, this demand was up significantly, sort of more than 25%. Next slide, please. So given this sort of this change, this increase in demand, charities, began to adjust to these changes. And when we reached out, we sort of asked, which of the following changes the charities had made in response to the coronavirus crisis. And I think like many of us, the response there was overwhelmingly, charities were also working remotely, and they were having to find sort of alternative and innovative ways to deliver that service. And we also found that, charities were finding new ways to reach beneficiaries, and a lot of charities had actually refocused their activities. And this is something that we saw come through in some of the applications that CAF received for the CAF emergency fund that was set up in response to the crisis. And also more recently in the CAF Resilience Fund program, we saw a lot of these sort of this in the applications that were coming through. Next slide, please. So for some charities, this crisis and having to work remotely really needed to sort of accelerate this innovation and digital transformation. And what we found was that, when we asked charities which of the following applied, 1 in 5 said they had to accelerate their plans for online fundraising. And actually, when we did a poll back in May, around 23% of charities said that they didn't have the facility to accept digital donations. And of these, around 12% said that they couldn't afford the technology to actually move their this technology for online donations, which is I think really interesting, because from our UK giving research we found that actually more than half of donations that are made by the public are cash donations. So I think this sort of quite high percentage of charities that were unable to receive online fundraising was became quite an issue and quite a theme that has been constant throughout. Next slide, please. But I think there were some positives, and there were some sort of surprises perhaps that came out during the pandemic. So when we asked charities, what surprised you most about your charity since the start of the pandemic, I think overwhelmingly it was how the organisations had adapted to this new normal, new ways of working. And also what came out really highly was the resilience of staff and their ability to sort of adapt to these changes. Next slide, please. And then we are sort of charities are sort of looking longer term and out towards the future post the pandemic. We are sort of charities, what challenges do you think would persist once the lockdown has eased? And overwhelmingly here again we had the sort of inability to plan for the long term. So all of this uncertainty and change and uncertain future, actually for a lot of charities, they were saying this inability to plan was one of the things that they were sort of most concerned about. And also, the impact from the economic downturn on fundraising and the charities' income. And I think at this point, it would be really good to hear from the audience, with our poll that we've set up, just to get some feedback from yourselves, how you have sort of reacted or how you've dealt with these challenges that have arisen. So I think at this point, we're just going to take a few moments to allow you to complete the poll.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kate. So if the audience can navigate, or echo, but the poll section on the right-hand side, we'd be really interested in understanding the challenges you're facing and how Pro Bono OR might be able to support that. If it's an other, we'd really like to know what that other is. So please put it in the chat. And if it prompts any sort of questions for us, there's also the Q&A section where we'd really like to hear from you. So if we've got time at the end, we'll reflect on those questions as well. Yeah, I'll hand back to Kate as we wait for those sort of like poll numbers to come in. We'll catch that up at the end. Thanks.
Thank you. So I think we also asked charities, what other help might be of benefit, in helping to sort of cope with the pandemic. Actually, can we move on to the next slide, please?
Yeah, can you see the correct slide, or can you see the upcoming slide? Sorry.
It's just the slide with the poll. Thank you. So thinking about this sort of, the pandemic, we asked charities to what extent they agreed or disagreed with the following statements. And what we found was that 3 in 10 charities agreed that businesses have helped them in other ways during the crisis besides donations of money. And more than half of charities agreed that they would benefit from working with businesses to find solutions to their challenges. That's really, the last slide from me, but hopefully that has given, an overview of some of CAF's research findings into the impact of the pandemic on charities and how charities have had to sort of change and adapt to cope and perhaps introduce sort of new processes. So hopefully that's given sort of quite a nice introduction then to how the Pro Bono Operational Research Society scheme may be able to help, with some of these aspects of change. I believe there'll be an opportunity to ask sort of questions and for discussion at the end of the presentation. So I'll hand over to Jane and Amy at this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kate. Yeah, please do pop any questions for Kate in the chat function, and we'll make sure that we get to them at the end. So now I'm just going to talk to you very briefly about the Pro Bono OR scheme. So we are the charitable arm of the OR Society, which is a membership organisation for people who work in operational research, analytics and data science, okay? But we are also a charity. And the OR Society set up this pro bono scheme to help third sector organisations. So we help these organisations, we help charities, and we help just general good causes in the UK by enhancing their impact, improving their operations, efficiency and decision making. And we do all of this by running free consultancy projects where we connect our volunteers with good causes who are facing challenges that we believe can be solved through the application of OR, analytics and data science. So this is the why we run the scheme. We do this because we want more organisations to benefit from operational research, as well as providing members with the opportunity to work in different sectors. So we use analytics, modelling, problem structuring methods, data science to determine the best solution to a problem and then the best practical course of action. We know that it's relevant and helpful to charities, and it helps them inform strategic, tactical and operational decisions. And we know that a lot of third sector organisations don't have the funds available to hire consultants, and they often don't have the in-house capability as well to use analytics or data science or to understand their data. I know that's why probably a lot of you are here today, and that's something that analysts and volunteers do for organisations for free. So this is what we fulfil our aims by running short-term projects where we match up a volunteer who's interested in working on a certain issue with the charity that's facing that issue. On average, our projects take about 3 to 5 days, but they're spread out over a period of time that an organisation decides with the volunteer. Since we were founded in 2011, we've undertaken over 150 projects. And there's no sort of one type of project, so I've just pulled out a few key terms that come up a lot in our project scopes. So like decision making, process improvement, impact measurement, data analysis comes up a lot. And at the bottom are some organisations that we've helped as well. So how does it work? Well, there are 3 main ways to receive help from our scheme. Obviously, you can start a project with us, with one of our volunteers. You can simply just look at the resources that we have on our website. If you go to the OR Society /Pro Bono OR, or you can join in on our free webinar series that we're currently running for charities. So the most involved way is through a project. And really simply on this slide, I've just got how one goes about starting a project. You just expression of interest to that email on the screen, Pro Bono or the OR Society, just letting us know that you want more information or that you've got an issue and you want to know if we could help. You fill out a quick registration form which tells us about you and your issue. It doesn't necessarily need to be a set issue or problem. You can just say we're having trouble figuring out our next steps due to COVID, for example. You then speak with an OR specialist and they go through your issues with you. They have a chat with you to see if there's a potential project. Sometimes our work just stops there. You talk through with a specialist. They just give you some pointers and you go away and carry them out yourselves. Or they think, yeah, this is quite a bit of work. Let's get you a project. They create what the project will look like, called a project scope. We send it out to our volunteers. They send us application forms and then you select who you want to work with and the project starts. As I said, we also have additional support that aren't just projects. We have a webinar series we're currently running. The next one's 20th of May, and we're measuring, that's measuring the impact of charitable investment. In June, we've got modelling to improve efficiency and effectiveness, and then how to use simulation modelling to perform better. And then finally, in July, we've got strategic planning in uncertain times, which is really great at the moment. We also have case studies on our website. You can ask for specific ones if you want to email Pro Bono OR, or you just go on the website, which I'll give you on the next slide. Click on the case studies tab, and you can search by the type of charity or the type of problem a charity's faced. If you're facing something similar, you can see what's been done previously. And this is how to reach us. So we've got the website, that's the email address, and you can also find us on Twitter. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Jane Parkin now, who is an independent consultant, but she's also a member of our project scoping committee. So she's one of those people that you would talk to help you figure out if there's a project there or not, or how we can help you. She's going to talk through some case studies which relate to the issues highlighted by Kate earlier in her talk that obviously charities have been facing due to COVID recently. So Jane, over to you.
Thank you very much, Amy. I thought I've looked for some case studies
Is
that
Jane
I've
on
been...
mute?
Pardon? Am I on mute?
I can hear you, Jane.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Yes, sorry. I thought I'd find some examples of pro bono case studies that I've been involved in that tackle some of the issues that came from the CAF research. So the first one, next Amy please, is for a local charity that helps children and families, and they were bothered about getting funding. And what they asked us to help them with was getting a source of demographic information so that when they need to apply for funds, they can immediately go to this demographic information. And they also wanted help so that when over the next few years, they could just click on a button and they'd get the most up-to-date information available for applying for funding. So what I did, I looked at all the data sources that were available. There's a lot of public data out there. Office of National Statistics, local authorities have their own data, Public Health England has its data, and so on. And I produced some tables that they could put in their funding applications, and also some charts and some maps. And I gave them a document saying, this is how you update it. Next one, please, Amy. So that's an example of some of the outputs that I gave them. You can see that the local charity is in Kirklees. And so some of the stylish pictures, first of all, comparing the area with England is very useful information to give to funders. And the maps are also very helpful, showing the differences in the areas. Thanks, Amy. Next. The next one was an organisation that basically wanted to do more with less. They wanted to improve their processes. They had a lot of volunteers who were spending their time doing low-level routine things. And what they really wanted to do was to free up some of their resource to develop more value-adding activities. Next, please, Amy. So we used something called process mapping. We talked to all the people at the charity. We developed maps of what they were doing now. We identified where there was duplication, where there was inefficiencies, and we also recommended more activities and ways of measuring impact, because at that time the charity had no real way of measuring impact. And we then, because we recommended a lot of changes, we recommended a roadmap to move from the current system to the new service delivery model. Next, please, Amy. So if you haven't seen a process map before, they're quite straightforward. you show what's happening in what order, and you can make them as detailed or as high level as you like. And secondly, just how we produced recommendations, what you can do over time, and the different colours showing how they relate to different aspects of the work. Thanks, Amy. And the last one, I know that Kate's survey showed a lot of people were finding that they were having increased demand. And so this is a problem that I looked at for a charity that had a call centre open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they were expecting a 60% increase in their business. They needed to keep their customer service levels, so it was no good people ringing up and finding the line was engaged, but they didn't have any more funds for more staff. So this involved quite a lot of work. We had to collect and analyse data. We needed to know when calls were coming in, what time of day, what day of the week, how much they varied. We needed to know how long it took to answer a call and how long it took to deal with it afterwards. Once we got the data, we could build a model which we could use to compare how they were working now with possible different ways of scheduling their staff. So the two pictures that I've put up, the first one was the analysis of phone calls and what we expected them to be. And you can see from that that at about 4 o'clock in the morning, you don't get very many phone calls. They reach up to a maximum at about sort of 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And they're far higher on Monday to Friday, then lower on Saturday and lower still on Sunday. So we needed all that basic getting the data and analysing it to get patterns of arrivals. And then I've shown you one screen dump from a simulation model. I'm sorry, it looks really, really complicated. But one thing it shows you is the customer service, and this was looking at the current system of staffing, and the customer service was lower than their targets. The very confusing little chart over time at the top, at the bottom, shows the utilisation of the staff and the customer service level. And what you can tell if you look at that in a lot of detail is that you want to, if you want to have a high customer service level, you'll have to put a lot of staff on, and so the utilisation will be low. So it's a trade-off between how busy the staff are and how well you keep to your customer service level. So I've run out of time now. That's just a very short feel for 3 very different types of project that we've done for Pro Bono OR. And now I'll leave it over to Ashley, who's collected your information from your poll and your chat.
Thanks, Jane. So yeah, really mixed results on the poll, which is really interesting to see. And obviously a lot of different challenges hopefully will be coming our way in Pro Bono OR that we'd love to support you on. So yeah, thank you for everyone who voted in our poll and also commented within the chats. It's really helpful. If you've got any other questions that come up even on a later date, obviously Amy will share all our contact information again, but I've also put it in the chat, our email. So do give us a shout. I'll hand you over to Amy now. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, are there any last minute questions that anybody wants to ask us while we're here? But yeah, if not, please send any questions from myself or Kate to the Pro Bono OR at theorsociety.com, and we'll get back to you. And Owen, yeah, he said, I've used the scheme at 2 charities and it's really great and I recommend it. So thank you very much, Owen.
Can we see the poll results?
Oh.
So, yeah, I don't know if you can pull it through, Amy, or...
I can't, unfortunately. I'm not able to. Do we have one in particular that had more than others?
So slightly was loss of funding and income with 4 votes, so 28.6% of the poll. But similarly, so tackling new technologies and demand for different services both had 3 votes each as well. So lots to think about.
Yeah, so I suppose with different demands, that's scenario modelling that obviously we'll be talking about in our upcoming webinar in June. And I suppose new technology, you need new ways of working to accommodate it, which I think obviously Jane can talk a bit about. So I mean, if you are struggling with that, please do get in touch and sort of process mapping of what you're doing at the moment, so we can see maybe how you're able to accommodate changes and things like that. So,
oh yes, I've got the chart up now. If you click on polls and then look at each one, so loss of funding, income wins, then the demand for different services, tackling new technologies come up next. Sian was talking about increased demand for new services. Go on, Sian. Put in the chat and say how you've dealt with that. That's a challenge to you. That's peaceful, isn't it? Yes.
what would you recommend, Jane, for sort of dealing with loss of funding and income? What would your first go-to be?
Well, there's 2 aspects, which is looking at new ways of funding, how you can get more funding. That's one side of it. But the other side of it is also looking at how you can continue to offer your services with less funding. And if not, which services you need to drop. So there are various aspects. Can you do your services more efficiently? That's a great one for OR, improving efficiency, and also just looking at taking decisions on which ones you have to drop and the decision making. We do some very good what we call soft facilitation. If we're looking at decisions, we get all the key people in, so it may be some trustees, some staff, some volunteers, and we run a session and we say, look, we have to make some decisions. These are the possible decisions, and you can talk through with everybody. And we do it by putting a board. You can do this online, or you can do it in face-to-face, and putting the different issues and seeing which are most important and which issues affect other aspects, until we can get agreement on any future decisions. It's always difficult in the case of a charity because there's so much different attitudes from different stakeholders who have different requirements, that it's a very useful idea to have a facilitation session and get everybody's opinions on what we should do in the future. So that's the one really about loss of funding.
That's great. So I'm conscious it's now 10 past. But yeah, I think you can message on this platform as well. So yeah, I think we'll probably be ushered off very soon. But yeah, if you do have any quick questions before we go, please do pop them in the chat.
Owen, do you have any comments on the sort of projects that you've done with Pro Bono? I know I liked your comment saying that you can thoroughly recommend us. That's nice to know. Oh, yes, data mapping, open data. That's very nice, yes. A lot of charities don't have the time, really, to go and examine all the different data that's actually available out there. But that's a very, very good one to be able to do. If you get consultants, pro bono consultants, they can spend a bit of time actually examining what data there is and what can be useful. And yes, what drives patient satisfaction? That's another one. That's also about how you can measure your impact, and segmenting your supporters, that will help for your funding, I think. So thanks very much for that, Owen.
They're all interesting ways of sort of going about solving similar issues. So that's great. Okay, I think we will probably have to end here. I think I think it's a break now, but then let people go to other sessions shortly. Thank you very much for joining us today. You can get in touch with us on the OR Society website /pro bono. You can read our case studies. You can see our upcoming webinars and book onto them as well. They're all free and they're run through Zoom. You can email us any questions and Kate's details as well. If you want this slide pack as well, please do just email and I can send it over to you. And obviously we're on Twitter as well. So you've now got some time to explore networking or the expo. So I hope you'll have a great rest of your day, and thank you for joining us.
And we look forward to hearing from you if you've got any challenges that you think that we could help you with.
Yeah, and thanks to Kate and Ashley and you, Jane, as well for being here today.